Welcome to Acts 2 and 42. Our view of the angels, our view of where demons came from, what we call evil spirits and demons, our view of the angels that are chained in waiting judgment, all those, line up. But, it's when Paul talks about principalities and powers, like he's talking, he's talking, you know what I mean? Like that, this is what he's referring to. And when we started studying Satan and started asking questions about like certain scriptures didn't make sense. Till you remember, I told you, I was like, look, there's something we're missing, right? Because we go from the Old Testament where Satan's mentioned like twice, like once, and it's not even a proper noun. It's not a name. It's a thing. It's a Satan. It's an adversary. It's not, the man or the spirit named Satan. I think he's present, but he's not called that. So it's just adversary. And then, all right, so that canon is closed, that collection of books called the Old Testament. Ezra and Nehemiah's day, they collect the books back up, and that's, what we call the Old Testament is whatever happened then. But then you have deuterocanonical or apocryphal text, which these are a bunch of different terms, but deuterocanonical, are the books that were written, that happened and were written after Nehemiah and Ezra collected those books, after they made that quote canon, which just means the rule or the standard or the measuring stick. Like this is the inspired text or whatever, the word of God, whatever terms you guys use. But things that happened in the next couple hundred years and were written about and writings that took place, some canons still have them. Early translations of the Bible at least include them as an appendix. And today we call them apocrypha, which means like unknown or hidden, I think I'm remembering that. All this is just, fact check me if you want. And then the New Testament, the writing of the apostles, all of a sudden is talking about all of this Satan and demonology and principalities and powers and casting out evil spirits and what's that?
Angels being locked up.
Yeah, the angels. Yeah.
Judging angels, like all kinds of stuff.
We were going to, let's make a note of that. We talk about doing podcasts and we never do them, but let's make a note about, scriptures that don't come from the Old Testament, or at least not to our knowledge, but there's also scriptures that they don't come from the Old Testament, and neither did this doctrine. This doctrine came from the intertestamental period. Those few hundred years from, again, Ezra and Nehemiah's time, temples rebuilt, and they collect the books, right? But then what we call apocrypha, like I say, those books are written, and the Maccabean era, the Maccabean Wars, and all that. So all that takes place, and they're writing these things, and then that's the Second Temple era. And in the Second Temple era, they started talking more about demons, and I think their knowledge or their theology on them started to evolve or started to expand, because now you start seeing writings that actually talk about these things, and then now Jesus is on the scene. What is he talking? What is he talking? It's all unseen world. It's all spirits. It's all casting out, binding, loosing, Satan, Beelzebub, which means Lord of Flies, Lord of Spirits, but now he's Lord of Spirits. Where did that come from? An ancient Jew just knew that there was an adversary, man, it's crazy. So long story short, there's a lot. And first understanding that intertestamental period, the mind of the Jew, at least to my understanding today, it seemed to have changed. It seemed to have evolved. And now the doctrine and so forth on evil spirits is being elaborated on. And, the book of Enoch is written and so forth, or the book of Enoch is being shared, is being transmitted, is being copied, or a version of it, to the point that we do have not only text that reference it, but we have church fathers that reference it as well. So something did exist in that era. And the teaching did exist without a shadow of a doubt. The teaching that comes from the first book of Enoch, I would specify, or at least the first 10 chapters or so of the first book, because all scriptures are compiled, they're all compositions of these writings and these writings put together. So if one comes in question, you mentioned this about the faith or whatever, you don't throw the whole thing out and say, well, I just question the whole thing. No, that page of that book may have been flawed, but it had nothing to do with 37 pages before that. That came from a different source, So anyway, man, it's a lot. It's a lot to go through.
As far as the unseen realm, how I explain it to my kids, and maybe I don't know, maybe this could help somebody else understand. It's like I go back and we talk about Noah's time, and we talk about angels not keeping their first estate, coming down, procreating with humans, having gigantic children, giants, which you see later on, again, and further scriptures, David and Goliath, and then Goliath having brothers. There's also this long living giant, was it Og? I can't remember what his name was. However, look it up because it's all up in there.
Og from the land of Bashan, I think. Bashan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an important territory.
So they die. Now they're disembodied spirits because they're partly angel, partly human. Angels are immortal, so they have that spirit, and now they're disembodied spirit, which is where you get demonic spirits from. We wonder where they came from. This is where they came from. This is the origin story of demons, ghosts, and whatever, some aliens, whatever. This is the origin story. From there, we go from then God sees this is they're just jacked up, so God gets rid of it. Okay, and now we start over, and then we have Noah, his sons, their wives, and so on. Now let's fast forward and we go to Nimrod. Okay, so they build the Tower of Babel. I'm not even going to get into all that with Nimrod and how he became what he was, but he made himself a god in a way, and so they decide we're going to build this tower. We're going to make a name for ourselves because they were supposed to be fruitful, multiply, and disperse. So they get together. They have this. We're going to make a name for ourselves. We're going to be great. Extra biblical text says they had an agenda where they was going to go up and basically fight God, take the throne. So they built this tower. I think I could have swore, I forgot how many years it said they was working on it. But they were so dedicated to this one world, one religion, because they worship the same entities. They all were together. They were all one. We need to get that in our mind. The whole thing was a global government, okay? And they was going to build this tower. They was going to go against God. They was going to establish their own gods, make a name for themselves. They was going to be great. Unity, inclusion, all that. So God seen what they was doing and was just like, man, you leave them alone, and they collaborate. They go through all this. They're trying to. And he read their hearts. He knew what they was planning on doing. Which makes me think, was it possible they could do it? Because anyway, he struck that down, confused their language, so they couldn't communicate with each other. They were so dedicated to this task. They worked on it for years, day and night. There was no rest. They just changed shifts. So it was constant building.
They esteemed the blocks more than they did the people.
I was just about to say that if a person fell, because mind you, this thing is this high. So if a person fell and dropped, it was business as usual. They just kept building, going on. If a brick fell, they would mourn over the brick. So God comes down, confuses their languages, smashes it to smithereens. Now, because they all speak different languages and stuff like that, they all kind of group together in their own groups where they can understand each other. And from there, they disperse. Now, what God does, that's in the natural. And then what God does in the spiritual is he says, all right, so I'm going to allot different, I'm just going to say angels for argument's sake. I'm going to put an angel over here on this territory. You're going to guard and you're going to govern them and watch them. I'm going to put an angel over this territory. But when these people go over here, I'm going to watch and govern over them and all this other stuff. But this right here, this lot is going to be mine. So God took a lot for himself. All right. So now we have the principalities and powers all set place at this point, you know what I mean? Because over these territories, fast forward, people start worshiping these things. People started worshiping these entities.
The same gods, correct, that they took from Babel. Yeah,
which is crazy. So keep in mind, they all still had the same mind frame. It was just in different languages now. Like, so, which is why if you look at other like pagan religions and other I don't want to say cults, but other, let's just say other religions. So you got Hindus and good God, all these esoteric religions, and they all have an origin story. Even ancient and Mayans, they all have an origin story of a flood. People speak of like Anunnaki and stuff like that. Those are like fallen angels. Like it was. They're all the same story, just in different languages and different folklore. Gilgamesh, all these different things you probably heard. Titans, all these weird things. Mars, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, all of them. All this stuff it all stems right back to the Tower of Babel. Same story. They just all broke up, tweaked it a little bit, but it's all the same.
Are you sure you didn't write Unseen Realm?
So this is where I start getting excited, because as we see these territories over here, they had that entity over them, and then God has his lot. Then we get to Abraham. He tells Abraham, like, you know, my family is basically going to come from your bloodline. So my portion of territory on this planet or plane of existence, this is going to be my portion. So later on, like I said, it's all separated. Everybody has their lots. Abraham is where, you know, this huge God's family and his lot is going to come from. So I'm trying to fast forward. I'm skipping like generations here. So we go all the way to Jesus. Jesus comes, and not only is he here to basically set the record straight, like he's the second Adam. He's here to. He's coming to take the territories back. Yeah, I was about to say we were those nations that were given to other other entities and stuff. We was not God's children. We was not his elect.
Gentiles, you mean the other nations? And this is why this is another indirect reason why, like, a Hebrew Israelite view is false. That Gentiles just means the diaspora, whatever. The Jews, the 10 tribes that were, you know, spread all over the world. No, this is reversing Babylon. This is reversing you know, what happened at the tower. He's coming back to bring them back.
Bringing his stuff with people that were not his people.
Right. So, and until the dispensation of the Gentiles is fulfilled, until he's done calling all of them back in. Notice first was the lost tribes, first was the Jews, and then it was to Cornelius and them, you know, to the Gentiles, you know. That were never his people, you know, that he would be a light to, right? As Isaiah said, you know. So, but no, he's coming to take those nations back, not at that very day, but he's initiating that process and sending out apostles, sending forth. Apostle means one sent forth. He's sending forth men to take the banner of the name of the Lord to different nations.
Right.
Period.
So not only is he coming here collecting souls back to God, not only is he here collecting people that shouldn't even be there. So now we have a chance to be with God, because we was cast off like after Nimrod. So now we have a chance to be here back with God because we believe in Jesus, and which is so simple. And you got to be just stubborn to not take that deal. But not only is he taking the souls back, but he's taking territory back. So when he was coming down here, Keith, you was talking about it earlier.
Reversing Hermon, Mount Hermon. That's where the angels ascend, right? When they came down on Mount Hermon when they took women.